Good morning, everyone. My name is Eric Crutchlow. I'm Senior Product Manager Network Security at Dell SonicWall. Why it's time to upgrade to next generation firewall topic. I will be going over what next generation firewall is, some of the other basics that I consider the fundamentals of firewalls that you need to make sure are already there. And I will try to be actually as vendor agnostic as possible. While I certainly like selling our product because I think it's the best, I think it is owed to you to make sure that we give you complete information that you can use on whatever decision that you make and give you an idea of what this is all about. I will be giving examples that obviously are using our product because that's the easiest access I have to our next generation firewall. But this is certainly something that is very consistent across the enterprise level next generation firewall vendors that are out there today. So without further ado, let's start off by kind of going over the pain points of why people really started looking at next generation firewall and what is it all about. So when you think in terms of before next generation firewall came out and people were looking at their firewall and they were saying, you know, really, what can this tell me? Something's going over port 80. What is it? Do I know what social media presence or exposure that I have? Are we allowing outbound stuff from our network that we shouldn't be? And are we doing things over the network that are going over SSL that may be encrypted that I really don't know what that is all about? And then what bandwidth is being utilized by items that really have nothing to do with my business versus what is being used for my business? And in the end, P2P traffic, which is things like BitTorrent, people downloading movies and games and other kinds of software. This honestly is probably the number one culprit for bandwidth wasting that I can think of. Most schools, I would say, if they don't have next generation firewall or the ability to manage P2P type traffic, 50% of the bandwidth is wasted on that. And remember, bandwidth is generally a monthly recurring cost. Maybe it's not much for you. In some cases, it is because of where they are. But it is a recurring cost that you need to want to manage. More importantly, you want to be able to prioritize your own traffic and make sure that the things that are applicable to what you are doing are getting done, and things that have nothing to do with your business or education or government institute are being pushed to the side, or at least you're seeing where it is being used by whom, and you can have that discussion as to why this is appropriate. So with all the stuff that's out there today, these are some of the statistics that we're finding. 25% of office internet traffic is non-business related. As I said before, I find in education it was more like 50%. 50% of surveyed companies said at least 30% of their bandwidth is being consumed by social networking traffic. To a point that is, and the question is really, where is it going? Do I really even care? The fact that it's social networking versus peer-to-peer or IM or whatever. What I'm considering is I want to be able to identify what is going on my network and be able to access that information and give it to the people that need to then have maybe a discussion with what's going on at an employee level. But more importantly, I would say there are a couple things you want to take a look at here. Acceptable use policy, saying what the purpose is for this access, what are the business reasons for it, making sure it's well communicated. Educating employees is going to be your key thing. I don't care what firewall you have. If you don't have employees that understand the significance of what they're doing, so for example, if I'm going to use BitTorrent and download games or videos, not only is it illegal, but on top of that, that's where the people with malware know what's going on and are putting stuff in there so that they can compromise your systems. And if your employees don't understand that, they need to make sure that they do, that they're causing you a risk, as well as obviously they're not doing their job, and making sure that they understand that by doing this, there are going to be consequences. So they shouldn't be. And more importantly, I think some people just are unaware of everything that is on the internet, and even in this day and age, I talk to people all the time at companies, and they have no idea that by going to a particular website that they saw on an email that's going to introduce some kind of risk. So to give you another statistic that's not on here, when we talk about our own firewalls and our own security systems, we push out signatures for malware and viruses maybe several times a day. But when it comes to spam, we're actually pushing out signatures every 5 minutes. And that's because that is one of the easiest ways to get people to open up a website and get something malicious put down onto their computer. So what's on your network? The idea that a lot of stuff is coming through port 80 or port 443 is key to understanding the origination of this. And the key here is when the internet first started, stateful packet inspection was the big thing. I could control a port. I could say what is allowed in, what's allowed on a port level. But because the web was based on port 80, 443 being HTTPS, that was generally opened, but whatever went across there went across, and I had no way of knowing what's going on. With this next generation after that, we had what's called UTM, Unified Threat Management, which said, you know, I'm going to look at everything that's coming across port 80 and say, if there's malware there, I'm going to block it. If it's encrypted traffic, though, I may or may not be able to do that. Next generation firewall is all about the ability to say, okay, I see the stuff coming across the port. I'm going to identify the application. You tell me what you want to do with it. I'm, of course, going to inspect it for malware and such, and right then and there, I'm going to go kill it. But if you have the need to be able to go to Facebook, and in this case, maybe I want certain people in marketing to go to Facebook, I will give you that ability. And that's really the crux of what's going on with next generation firewall. Giving you the ability to see what's on there and then saying what you want done with that, what policy, what structure you want to add to your organization. So malware continues to thrive, of course. There's a lot of money in it, and it's a lot easier to go in and steal money with malware than it is, for example, to go and rob a bank. While the money is certainly at the bank, so are a lot of other people with alarms and guns and things, and police and FBI. It's much easier, obviously, to use malware. The significance here is most of the botnets and such are done for financial gain. But beyond the financial goals, we have cyber warfare with things such as Flame, Aurora, and Stuxnet. And I put in a question mark goals here for a very specific reason. Once these botnets and such get out, other people will see them, and they actually have then the code for how this stuff was used. And once they get that, it's kind of like giving the secret to the atomic bomb out to somebody. Maybe they have the resources to actually take that stuff and make it a lot more difficult. But with source code, any programmer can take that code, such as Flame, and go ahead and morph it into something else, which has just recently happened. So Flame, originally done for cyber warfare, is now being used for financial gain in another version called Gauss. And it's actually infecting people over in the Middle East, trying to get their credit cards and all this kind of stuff. So the problem is that regardless of where the malware comes and what the initial use of it may be, you're getting people who are looking at this code and using it to go and attack you for maybe other reasons. So I get military-grade malware now being used for financial gain. Very serious trend, very big trend that causes me a lot of concern. But again, next generation firewall will help you with identifying this. A UTM firewall should also be able to help you with this. It's a matter of who's getting the signatures out there first. My key thing here in messaging is while any firewall should be able to detect this, are they the first ones to do so and have the signatures out? Having antivirus and anti-malware on a desktop is very important because generally you will then get two different sources of signatures and two different research groups giving you that capability to make sure that your desktop is in fact secure. And that if your firewall doesn't get it, great, hopefully your desktop does, and vice versa. Small networks, large targets. So the FBI is supposed to go in and investigate any kind of attack that I believe the level is supposed to be $5,000 or more. due to the fact that there's so many people doing this and resources are limited. In general, the FBI will take a report, but investigation will only go on when it's probably about $100,000 or more. And it's not to say that they're not doing the job. They're doing the best they can with the resources that they have. Hackers know this, and therefore they've been starting to attack small firms because small firms don't necessarily have the kind of equipment that they need in order to protect them. And where we have a firewall that from an MSRP standpoint is $500, maybe about $400 on the street that can protect them, small firms tend not to know about what these firewalls are about and what they need. And if you are a small firm, my biggest recommendation is to get a reseller that knows what they're doing. It's cheaper to do this than have to pay $22,000 to Visa, where you get our MasterCard and such, because you got hacked and a bunch of the credit card numbers got out. I think it's much cheaper insurance. So $22,000 can put a small business out of business, and this is where hackers have been shifting to because they know the money is there and they're not going to be investigated as much. So can your firewall see the threats? A lot of vectors that have traditionally been considered safe, like PDFs, if you're as old as I am, you'll remember the good old days of when people would send Word documents, and of course there was a plethora of malware that went after Word documents, and all of a sudden people start saying, do not send me a Word doc, send me a PDF. Well, Adobe, went ahead and, as the years went by, added scripting capabilities and things which made it as dangerous as a Word doc. And therefore, this got exploited because there was trust that in the industry was used, because before it was much harder to go ahead and hack a PDF. Same thing with Flash. This is probably one of the biggest flaws out there. Apple is really against supporting it in many of their OSs because of that security flaw. Also, the download manager in Adobe was also attacked. Where's the vector that I can get the most malware out there? And these are the people that are constantly getting nailed. People may not like Microsoft and say, oh yeah, very insecure system. But given the number of people using it and the way that they go after it, it actually, in my opinion, probably not one of the worst ones, probably one of the better ones. But of course it's going to be primary for an attack because I have more people running Windows than I do, for example, Macintosh. So security from next generation firewall, intrusion prevention, which is the malware, the SSL decryption, and scanning all the traffic. What we're talking about here is that the UTM portion of it's always there. We have signatures for viruses, we have them for malware. This is very important. When you view the different kind of vendors that are out there, I would say that as you go to third-party reports about firewalls, one of the things you will see, the people who have the better intrusion prevention and antivirus are those who do their own research in-house versus going outside and having some third-party agreement with people like Trend Micro or Kaspersky. It's not to say that Trend Micro or Kaspersky are bad. I think they're very good products. But what you'll see in the reports is, however it's being implemented or such, you get a much higher catch rate for those that do their own research in-house. And of course, here at SonicWall, we do that also. We have our own staff. We have honeypots all over the world, and we can see things going on in a very, very quick time frame. SSL decryption is very important because what winds up happening is people are smart and they say, hey, listen, I know you're doing some things to block access to Facebook, but I can use this proxy website using SSL. You can't see it, and therefore I'm going to go that way and get around your firewall. Well, SSL decryption is a very important component, especially in next generation firewall, because I want to be able to see all traffic and be able to make sure there's no malware coming across. The downside to this that you have to be very careful about is if you install something like this, make sure you tell all your employees about this, because if they decide that they're going to do banking from work, you as an IT organization may be able to then say, listen, we can see everybody's password. So on one hand, I think it's not a bad deal because it gives you the ability to say, hey, listen, do your work, do your banking at home. In some cases, you may say, hey, listen, we're really not that kind of an organization. We want to be able to give people some access. Some next-generation firewalls have the ability to give you that bypass to say, okay, banking will not be decrypted, as where others don't have it. So that's one of the key checkpoints you want to look for. But again, I would strongly suggest making sure you communicate with your employees that this, in fact, is being done, because it actually helps you mitigate people even trying it. And getting that call from IT saying, hey, basically, we see that you're going to Facebook via this proxy. What's your business reason for it? Is never a great call to get. And handing it off to HR is always a much better deal as an IT director than you having to make that call yourself. But having the ability to detect this is going to be a key thing. Scanning all traffic. Let's back up a little bit and look at different vendors. There's different technologies for scanning traffic. Many vendors only look at key types of protocols. So, for example, HTTP, POP3, SMTP. There's about a list of 6 types of protocols they will inspect, but everything else is not inspected. This is a major security hole. I would strongly suggest you stay away from anybody that doesn't scan all traffic. The other key to scanning traffic is the ability to scan all traffic regardless of size of the file. Many people use what are called proxy technologies, where they will go ahead and scan the file, but only if it's of a maximum size. So if it's up to 10 megabytes, no problem, I can scan it, because I have to buffer, which means I have to introduce latency. If it's over 10 megabytes, I may have to just dump the file, or I have to take it in. Your choice, and this is well documented in many of the vendors' administration guides. Make sure you look for that. The other way that they'll get around this is they'll say, we'll do a streaming type of AV inspection, and what they're doing is they're only inspecting a portion of the file, which means that they're compromising security in the sake of performance. So security, make sure you scan all traffic regardless of file size. Very important. Application awareness. So there's all sorts of applications that are out there. The key here is to make sure that whatever solution you use, the number of applications that can be identified is the ones that you're interested in. So SonicWall, for example, we identify over 4,000 different types of applications. Make sure that they are the ones that you want to be able to identify. And also, if you have custom applications, can you create your own signature sets? For SonicWall, we do. Other vendors, some do, some don't. And then the ability to visualize the traffic, and I'll show you in a little bit of a demo on a slide here later on what that's all about. But knowing what the application is, who the users are, and being able to see the traffic in real time is going to give you the way that you can manage your firewall and your applications going through it very quickly. So performance, people don't want delays. So when I talked about proxy firewalls where I'm taking a file in, waiting for it to come in, I'm going to have some latency going on that. So in SonicWall, what we do is we have something called reassembly-free deep packet inspection, where we do not reassemble a file. We look at it at a packet-by-packet level, and it's key to making sure that there's minimal latency that's introduced. And we don't care what size the network is. We can go up to 40 gigabits of throughput on a very high end. So, depending on what you're looking for, there's a model that you can choose that would make sense for your organization. So what is next generation firewall? We talked about stateful packet inspection, which is only looking at the headers of the packets, none of the data. The UTM type firewalls are doing the intrusion prevention antivirus. Application control is the key to next generation firewall with the SSL decryption and inspection. So in order to have a next generation firewall, it has to have each one of these features. And Gartner says that by 2014, they feel that next generation firewalls will be 35% of the install base, with 60% of the new purchases being next generation firewall. I really, really hope this is true, because it's amazing the number of current firewalls that are generation 1, really offering little if no security whatsoever. So this is what visualization looks like on a sonic wall. This is what I call the 30,000 foot viewpoint. You're seeing traffic coming in here, and down below there's a little legend showing you what that traffic is composed of. Generally just gives you an overall view of what the bandwidth is going in and out and what traffic is being taken up. So it's nice. It's not giving you much detail at this point. But then when we get to the network analysis, do I have peer-to-peer running on my network? Here's application flow monitor with all the different applications that are there, and at top is BitTorrent. So now that I see BitTorrent on there, I can go ahead and say, listen, I want to take a look at this a little bit deeper and find out what's going on. So I can create a rule and say, block this if I want, or bandwidth manage it. I'll give you some keys about that later on. In this case, I want to know who's watching YouTube. And in here, I can add it as a filter saying, okay, put YouTube up there. Tell me who the users are. And that way I know how many people are actually doing that in real time. I can then change this into a graph and show who's actually doing it. I can then give a call to this one guy that's eating most of the pie, Mr. Thompson, and have a little discussion. Now, if he happens to be the CFO or CEO, you may want to back off on that. On the other hand, if your whole bandwidth is choked, you may want to go ahead and have a little discussion with him about the importance of YouTube versus the importance of other applications in business. Tracking by country is a very interesting thing. This works sometimes. There are ways around it on the internet that people do use who know how to do it. But in general, if you know that you're not supposed to be getting any traffic from China or Kazakhstan or things like that, it's nice to be able to see who's coming into your network or going out and going to areas like Lithuania and say, listen, I really don't want any traffic going there. I have no business with that, and it will help me mitigate a lot of possible malware attempts that are being done through Eastern Europe or other Asian countries. Actually, the latest statistic is a lot of these guys know about this, and so they're starting to push this stuff out to Canada. So as funny as that may be, you may want to kick off some people from Canada unless you know, in fact, you're doing business with them. Application flow monitor here is tracking and identifying the network connections, giving you an idea. Here are all the countries coming in and how many of them are, and then you get to make the determination if this is legitimate traffic or not. So while we give it to you in real time, we can only collect so much stuff on the firewall for Sonic Wall. Other vendors have disk drives that are built into the firewall, and they can store a lot more data. Our focus is that the firewall should be processing traffic as fast as possible, but in order to collect this, we can do off-box reporting through standards called NetFlow and IPFix, which are great, so that you can use third-party tools for doing analysis. We have Scrutinizer, we have something called Analyzer that is different reporting tools, but because we support these standards, you can use things like Splunk, whatever tool that you happen to have that you want to be able to see this, and that way you can kind of see it over a period of time. The key to this is really, if you're going to use a firewall of any type, if you do not look at your logs and analyze what's going on, you're going to miss the opportunity to block an attack. An attack doesn't necessarily happen at one moment in time. What will happen is it can happen over a period of time, and the majority of attacks that have happened, according to Gartner, there were entries in the log files that were ignored showing that somebody was trying to intrude on the network. So having the ability to do the reporting and reviewing it is very key to making sure that you're not getting attacked, or what I would say is being probed before the attack, so that you can go ahead and have an idea of what you need to try and mitigate. All right, so we're at, I've got about 6 minutes for questions. I appreciate your time here. If you have any questions right now, I'd be happy to answer them about next generation firewall. I know this went kind of fast, but I'd be happy to go over anything or concerns that you have.